So the article I'm appraising today was a proactive study. So are the results valid? Did the intervention and control group start with the same prognosis? I believe they did because patients were randomized to either the pioglitazone group or the placebo group using fixed allocation randomization. Allocation concealment was not reported in the study, so that is a downfall. And were all patients in the study group similar with respect to known prognostic variables? Well, Table 1 gives you the baseline characteristics for the pioglitazone and placebo group, and the percentages are basically identical between both groups. So was prognostic balance maintained as the study progressed? I believe it was because blinding was achieved for the study duration. Investigators and study personnel were unaware of the treatment assignments for the duration of the study, and a matching placebo was used. But it was pointed out in the study that data and safety monitoring committees were aware of the assignments, but they had no interaction with the study participants. But I would be interested to know if they had any interaction with the investigators. Were the groups prognostically balanced at the study's completion? Follow-up was complete. But there was one patient in each group that was lost to follow-up. However, both these patients were included in the intention to treat analysis performed by the study. And the trial was not stopped early. It ran on average of about 34.5 months. So what were the results of this study? How large was the treatment effect? The relative risk reduction for the primary endpoint was 9%, and the relative risk reduction for the secondary endpoint was 15%. The absolute risk reduction for both the primary and secondary endpoint was 2%. And how precise was the estimate of the treatment effect? The confidence intervals for the primary endpoint was 0.8 to 1.02 with a hazards ratio of 0.9. This does cross the line of no difference, so these results were not significant. And in Table 4, all the components of the primary endpoint were analyzed, and the confidence intervals for all of them also crossed the line of no difference, so none of these results were significant. The hazards ratio for the secondary endpoint was 0.84 with a confidence interval of 0.72 to 0.98, so this didn't cross the line of no difference, so these results were significant. So how can I apply these results to patient care? Were all clinically important outcomes considered? I think they were. The primary and secondary endpoints studied were things like all-cause mortality, non-fatal MI, stroke, acute coronary syndrome, among others. And these are important outcomes for patients with type 2 diabetes. Surrogate endpoints were not explicitly stated in the study, but there were a number of physiological characteristics that were measured at the beginning, throughout, and at the end of the study, and you can find these in Table 5. So are the likely treatment benefits worth the potential harm and costs? The number needed to treat that I calculated was 50, but the one they stated in their study was 48, and specifically they said 48 patients would have to be treated for 3 years to avoid one first major cardiovascular event. And based on this and the absolute risk reduction of 2, I wouldn't have much confidence that the pioglitazone really decreases the risk of cardiovascular events in type 2 diabetics, and I think further research is definitely needed. Thank you.